Today, we are talking all about sellers and how to deal with price reduction. And so many people do not teach this. And I promise you, if you're in wholesaling, eventually you will have to deal with a price reduction. And just to let you know, we deal with it on a weekly basis. I'd like to tell you I do one or two a year, but honestly, we do like one or two a week. Why? Because stuff comes up in properties. People don't always tell the truth. And that's how business works. So when you find stuff out, you have to reduce the price, or sometimes we actually even have to increase our price. But I want to show you how to do it. And I'm going to break this down. So I'm going to give you 5 ways to get any type of price reduction, but we have to qualify what type of reduction. You have to classify it. What type of seller are you dealing with? That is the first thing we have to address. So in my opinion, there's basically 2 types of sellers in their business. And here's how I classify them. And if you guys don't believe me, 2 types of sellers. Number 1, easy sellers. Easy sellers, we do not ask for reductions for because they get it done right. They make your life easy. There's a reason we call them an easy seller. And for this reason alone, you've got to leave them alone. So if somebody gives you an incredible price, then you have to just leave them alone. So many people in this business feel like, oh, I'm going to give it. They like somebody coined it the haircut. And I'm here to tell you, you get a little lady that gives you a phenomenal price. Leave her alone. Just take care of her, do exactly what you're going to say, and move on with your life. When you guys try to get these, that's when greed just takes over this business. And I hate it. When somebody makes your life super easy and you don't have to change anything, run with it. Okay. If you attack a seller like this, you do not belong in wholesaling because yes, you can get a reduction, but I promise you, eventually it will catch up to you. The family's going to come after you. All sorts of bad things happen. And honestly, you got to treat people just like you treat your own family. And if you don't treat your family right, you got to fix that. Is basically the hard seller. And these are the people that drive us nuts. Now, a hard seller just pushes you. Like they're going to tell you things are good with the house when they're obviously bad. Unfortunately, if you want to buy this property and you think you have a shot at making it a wholesale deal, you're going to have to play the game. Now, I don't play the game like realtors do. We're not even talking about that, and I'm going to break it down. So the first thing we have to do is you have to assess your seller's motivation. And if you guys don't know how to do this, go over to freewholesaling.com. We teach you from the basics, MCTP, on how to qualify all customers. I'm here to tell you, most people that write a bad contract and need a reduction, most of the time you guys are dealing with non-motivated sellers. They belong with realtors. They need to be listed on MLS, and there's nothing we can do. Getting a slight discount off of a retail deal is not wholesaling. It's not even close. And I know every guru in America is trying to sell you a course on gurus, and I'm here to tell you, you do not want. You can make money doing it, but I'm just telling you, it is hard. And I get deals off MLS, but they're all off market, and they're all brought to me by realtors that I do work with. I have to assess their needs. So Rick, what do I need by assessing their needs? That's real simple. The easiest way, especially if you're a beginner and you want to figure out what type of seller you have, is real simple. Wants versus need. We only focus on people that need to sell their house. The people that want to sell their house, 9 times out of 10, they need to go to a realtor. Now, the only exception to this is when the house is motivated. When the house is motivated means that the house is completely run down and the seller's a little bit unreasonable, then I will play the game. If the house is in perfect shape and the seller's not motivated, walk away. You have no business being there. It has nothing to do with wholesaling unless you want to buy a house for retail and pay a ton of money and get a bank loan. Walk away from these people and you'll end a lot of your frustrations. I'm telling you guys, you have to understand. So now we know the 2 types of sellers. Once we break down the sellers, I'm going to give you 3 basic things that you have to do to get any type of reduction or how to avoid getting the reduction in the first place. So I'm going to just give you the foundation of it. Number 1, you've got to simplify your language. Most of you are like trying to be super advanced and like super cool, and you're talking in terms way above your head. Even newbies, I see this all the time. Now, as I got 10 years in this business, I talked over everybody's head and I had to dumb it down. And I'm telling you, simplify your language. If you're using big, intimidating words and people have to like look you up in like a dictionary, a thesaurus, you don't understand. So how do we simplify your language? Well, there's 2 simple ways to do it, and it works every time. Number 1, lose your ego. Just get rid of it. Your ego is there to make sure you're always right at any cost. And if you understand that, we're all built into it. It's built in our subconscious, and our ego is just the problem with the ego. It gives you that short-term gratification we all so crave, but the problem is it screws you in the long run because you don't get an honest assessment of what's going on in your business with your sellers. And when you do this, you are completely stuck. suck. So I get into it all the time with people with big egos, and I have to play with them. And you know how I play with them? I just work around them and I compliment them. I give their ego what they want, and then I ask for what I want. And the ego is ridiculous. You have to lose your ego. And the crazy thing about losing your ego is you have to think long-term instead of short-term. And most people in this world cannot do it. So when someone constantly brags and you're sitting there at a party, it's immature, it's extremely short-term, and it's self-fulfilling. It makes them feel good right there in the moment. Most of the stuff they're probably telling you is just erroneous. So understand, if your friends do it and your family does it, sellers are going to do it too. You can't do it back to them. You have to just lose your ego. You don't have to be right about anything. And even sometimes we just got to let the sellers be right. The second part of this is just, I know this sounds terrible, like it feels wrong to say it, but it's so true. You have to bring your conversation down to a third grade level. You know why? It's not that you're not smart. Like, a lot of you take that argument the wrong way. It's that anybody can understand you regardless of their business background or their personal education or how they were taught from their family or their parents. So a lot of times people with mortgages and amortizations and interest rate, it's scary. So you have to do the opposite. You have to be very simple, and you have to simplify your language. So if you couldn't explain it to a third grader, you probably can't explain it to your sellers any better. It's just the truth. So lose your ego and simplify your language, bring it down to a third grade level. Number 3 is part of the core of getting any price reduction or avoiding a price reduction. You ready for this? Just go for no. So many of you are trying to get a yes right off the bat, and I'm here to tell you it's the worst thing you can do. So you guys are all programmed to write contracts like pretty little realtors, which I don't have a problem with a realtor. My wife's a realtor. And you write contracts to try to get the yes. Well, I'm here to tell you wholesaling is the complete opposite. You write the contracts to get an initial no. Why? Because all negotiations begin when a price is put out on the floor. That's it. And if a price doesn't hit the floor, it's really hard to negotiate. And I've tried it a million times. Either you're going to give the price or the seller's going to get a price. We all know it's advantageous when your seller gives the price. Using the go for no method, which we teach over at freewholesaling.com, allows you to be rejected and expect it right off the bat and give you your LAO. And LAO is the opposite of MAO. So most of you are programmed to go in with your MAO. You need to know what your MAO is. You don't even start close to your MAO because you have no room to negotiate. So if a property's worth $100,000 and I offer you 40 or 50 grand for it, and you go, Rick, are you crazy? I can't do that. A lot of times you'll respond like, I can't go below $68,000. Now you started a negotiation, and guess what? Now I know my range is between 40 and 68,000. Now it's a very narrow window, and now I can negotiate, and I can use my personality and my conversation and the rapport I build to now try to close that gap. If you don't do go for no, I guarantee you're going to have to do so many price reductions, you're going to get sick of it. So the reason I give you go for no, it's not a technique for a price reduction. It's a technique to actually get you the right price right off the bat. And the problem is you guys been conditioned to go for yes on an offer. I'm here to condition you on wholesaling. It's the complete opposite. You go for no. Why? Because when you get a counter, you have a negotiation, you narrow the gap, then you use your rapport building skills in your conversation to try to close that gap. So now that we have gotten to that, now we're talking about, okay, Rick, I got the wrong price. So here we are. And this is the really cool part about this. I got the price wrong. What do we do now? So now we know the different types of sellers. We know the basic techniques to really try to avoid this, but sometimes it still happens. And guys, it happens to me all the time. I've been doing this 21 years. I'm telling you, price reductions are part of the business. So don't avoid them. Number 2, now we have to, what kind of price reduction we're going to get? Now, there's 2 types, guys. There's small reductions, and that's going to be 15% or less. Guys, most of your reductions hopefully are like 10 to 15%. And I'm here to tell you that's an easy number to close that gap. So say the seller wants $100,000 for a house, you offered 85 and you're 15% apart. I think that's still doable. It's not a huge gap. Small reductions, 15% or less. The problematic ones are when you just missed it. Like, Rick, I screwed up, man. And it's okay. And if you're in a virtual market, I guarantee this will happen. I guarantee it. Like if it hasn't happened to you, you're not marketing enough. So when you have a big reduction, it's going to be a 20% plus. I know I left a 5% gap because you can go either way with it. But honestly, when the reduction is huge, you have to have a strategy. Because have you ever asked for a huge price reduction and go, hey, listen, can you knock 100 grand off that price? I guarantee your answer is going to be no. So you have to have a different way to attack it. So what I'm going to do right now is teach you the two different methods for a big and a small price reduction. And in my opinion, doing this 20 plus years, it is the best way to ask for a reduction, because if you think it's hard to do the negotiation, in my opinion, a price reduction is much more intimidating and it's even more nerve-wracking. And so if you get the price done right up front, then that's great. And probably 85% of the time you guys will. 10 to 15% of the time you're going to miss. Why? Because we move fast and we try to move properties quickly and we don't always get it right. Why? We don't get perfect comps. I don't want you to do perfect comps, 10 minutes or less. And we write offers based on people's motivation and basic valuation. So now that we're there, let's see here. So you're going to have small reductions or big reductions. So I'm going to give you an example of other one. Let's start with a small one. The easiest one is the repair inspection method. So I get sellers all the time. Actually, what was it? Saturday. I went and looked at a property that I'm attacking on the bigger scale. So I go to look at a commercial property and I had to meet with the broker, and I wasn't supposed to do this, but it was on my schedule. So I go, let me just check it out. Now I've been trying to buy in this building for multiple years. So anyways, I get in there and of course the entire back of the roof, I mean, is completely stained. I mean, bad, horrendous. And I asked the realtor, what's the deal with the roof? And her comment to me was like, don't worry. It's scheduled to have a new roof on it through the property management company. I go, are you sure? Who'd you speak with? So I start writing notes on my phone because I know that's not true. I already know like the place has got a bad roof and there's no funds to fix it. Now it's a $300,000 roof. So anyways, it was a relatively small gap for when I do. So we were about $50,000 apart. Now keep in mind, it's a commercial property. It was like 8%. So here's what I do. I tell you what, I'll write the contract. You're saying the roof's good. And then here's what I'm going to do though. I'm going to have the roof professionally inspected. And if the roof does not live up to what you say, we're going to have to talk about a price reduction. So all I do is do a preemptive strike. And the really cool part is when you know something, number one, when you know something's bad just by looking at it. And number two, you know someone's lying to you. It's really easy to get this reduction. Guys, this is part of like playing the game. Sometimes you have to do. I get sellers all the time. The two biggest things we deal with in Florida, the roof and the air conditioning. So sometimes I remember sitting in a seller's house. I'm sweating in the middle of summer. It's 98 degrees out. I've looked at the AC handler. It's just completely covered in dog hair, dirt, and the outside, the compressor looks like it hasn't been on in years. And they say to me, I just don't want to run the AC. I don't want to waste money right now. So I'll put on there, so it's fine. I'll write the contract. You won't budge. I'm just going to have someone come over and inspect the house. And as long as that AC fires up and it's good to go, we have a deal. I already know between the roof, so the average home past the commercial property, it's not a $300,000 roof. We have anywhere from a $12,000 to $20,000 roof on average here in Florida. And then the AC system's usually around between $5,000 and $8,000, depending on the size of the house. So right off the bat, I already know I've got to get a $20,000 to $25,000 reduction on that. And she's saying, no, it's absolutely good. I'll just write it down. I go, let's play the game. Let's do it. And then when I come back, I'm going to get a third-party report. So someone will hand me a piece of paper. And then what I'll do is go back and meet with the seller and go, listen, I had someone look at it. Or sometimes right there at the inspection, I'll have the person tell them this, this, and this. Now, you guys are all assuming we're doing paid inspections. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do a paid inspection. You can use a contractor. You can use a friend. My suggestion is I would invest some time and money into it because that discount will more than pay for your buddy to go out and look at the property, or if you have to hire an inspector. And who wants to buy a house with like really bad stuff? So my technique here is only to get the reduction. And 9 times out of 10, when you present it in a third-party fashion, someone's report, or you get it from an inspector, they usually get the message and they understand eventually they'll have to negotiate with you. Now, that's for a reasonable difference. So let's talk about a massive difference like the one I was talking about earlier. When you have a huge difference of like 20% or more, so say you have a $200,000 house and you're off like 70 grand. What are your choices? You can ask for a reduction. Let me ask you this. What do you think the odds of getting a reduction when you ask for a $70,000 or $100,000 deduction? You're going to get killed. Like, it's a guaranteed no. And honestly, you're probably going to shut the door on that. So the best way, in my opinion, to handle it, you ready for this? It's the cancellation of contract method. Like what? So make sure you're within your inspection period. And once you're in your inspection period, if you have a massive difference, the seller's being unreasonable and difficult, just say, listen, Kate, where do I send over the cancellation of contract? And just be quiet. Don't say anything and listen for the reaction. So this is the same technique as going for no. You're looking for a counter. And if they say, hey, listen, send it over and yeah, you can get out of it, just leave it alone. There's nothing you can do or say at that point, and you're not really thinking it through clearly. Now you can ask, listen, would you consider like a different price if we closed faster? Most of the time they won't. What I'm looking for them is when they say, oh, hold on, Rick, wait a minute. I really need you to buy this property. What's the problem? And then I kind of go into it. I go, listen, we're just off on the price. What you told me, it's not even close. And I did some homework, and honestly, I just wrote the wrong number on your contract and I can't buy it for that. And I think you know it, and I feel bad for even running that contract. So where can I just send over the cancellation? So no. What price will work for you? Now we have a reduction without asking for a reduction. The difference is your seller asked for the reduction. You didn't ask for the reduction. I'm just telling you guys, this works probably 50 to 60% of the time. Now you still have to finagle it and negotiate it, but at least you have a shot, because if you've ever asked for a $70,000 or like $80,000 price reduction, it is usually a guaranteed no. So I want you to understand, like, going into that. But guys, so let's recap here real quick. You have to understand the type of seller you have. And mostly how do you do it is you have to gauge their motivation. The easiest way to do it is understand the difference between I need to sell and I want to sell. Once you have someone that needs to sell, keep moving forward, push forward. Then identify, do I have an easy seller or do I have a hard seller? Easy sellers, like, they're rare. I'm just here to tell you, but like, they're respectful and they honor their agreement. Difficult sellers constantly try to break your agreement, always asking for more, never stop. These people, you have to play the game. The easy sellers, you don't ask for reduction. Honestly, you need to check your pulse if you keep asking people for reductions, because eventually if you ask for too many reductions, you're going to lose deals. So there is a point of no return on asking for reductions. So I had somebody on a couple of weeks ago. I ask everyone for a reduction. I go, you're an idiot. You don't want to do that, guys. I'm just telling you, eventually people want to get out of contracts for you because you don't honor your word. Now, most of the time, these adjustments are maybe 10 to 15% of the contracts, and you got to have a reason for an adjustment. And then basically just simplify your language, make sure you go for the no. And remember, there's two types of reductions. There's big giant ones, 20% plus, and the small ones are usually 15% or less. I know there's a 5% gray area in there, call it what you want. And guys, at the end, you have to understand, you are not a salesperson in wholesaling. I will take this to the grave. You do not sell in wholesaling. You guide people through a series of questions and qualifications, and you try to make the best fit for people. You will never ever talk someone into just selling your house for your magical price. Either it works for them and they're highly confident in you, or it doesn't work. If you think like you can do the used car salesman and sit there and just talk your ear off, I watch people in wholesaling all the time. I'm like, you spent like 4 hours with that guy. You can't convince him to sell it for that. So the harder you chase him, the worse it's going to get. And once you understand that, you can use the repair inspection method or the cancellation of contract method. One's big, one's small, and it makes a huge difference. So guys, that is it on that.